It's time for ROTD Weekend. You know how sometimes the perfect holiday isn't that like big crazy one where everyone's in the kitchen and you can't even hear yourself think? I mean, those are great, but sometimes those small, simple, cozy ones are just perfect. And I have to say, last weekend was Canadian Thanksgiving, and it ended up just being me and Marty at home. I always get a little homesick at these times, and I want to do something special to celebrate, but it could be a little bit crazy overwhelming to do a full dinner. So over the years, I have found my super perfect chill Thanksgiving for two or for just a small group solution. What I do is I use the recipe that I have on Cook the Story for roasting turkey in parts. So that's where you get a turkey breast and you get some drumsticks, you can get some wings and some thighs. You buy them in parts, and there's all kinds of perks for why you would even do that for a big dinner. But what I do is I just get the drumsticks, which are my favorite part anyways, like 2 drumsticks for me and Marty. We had leftovers from those. Honestly, they were kind of huge. But yeah, I cook the drumsticks according to that roasting turkey in parts recipe. And if you were, for instance, more of a white meat person, you could use that same recipe for the turkey breast. Although I will link to how to cook turkey breast for you as well. I have an air fryer turkey breast recipe coming out soon. It's not up yet though. Just stay tuned and look for it closer to Thanksgiving on Cook the Story because it is the bomb. It is so good. But anyhow, you can do the breast or you can do the drumsticks, and I'm telling you, those drumsticks, they get so beautiful, crispy brown, juicy inside. And so yeah, so this past weekend for Canadian Thanksgiving, I did those. I did some mashed potatoes, a little turkey gravy, a salad for the two of us. I made some cranberry relish. I love this. The recipe is no longer on Cook the Story. We took it down for a variety of reasons. I should maybe think about putting it back up. But anyways, you can find recipes for this. It is cranberries, fresh raw ones that you blitz up in the blender with sugar and other ingredients, and it's just very fast and very easy. Love that. So that was our dinner, and then for dessert, we just had a Cadbury fruit nut bar and some blueberries, and we just sat on the couch and we're watching our new obsession. I'm obsessed with this show. It's called Wayward. Love it. It is so like creepy but good, like dark and funny too. I don't know. I'm obsessed with Wayward. Marty likes it too. You know what? It's set both in Canada and the US. I think that's probably part of it for this time of year for me too. Anyhow, that's what we did. Turkey drumsticks for dinner, fruit and nut bar, blueberries, and Wayward for dessert. And it was really nice. And you know, that cozy, scaled down approach is really the vibe that I'm going for this whole season, even when my kids are around, enjoying the deliciousness, enjoying everyone's company, but not feeling overwhelmed. And so, I'm going to remind you, if you're starting to think ahead to American Thanksgiving, it's like a month away. Don't forget that I have that fun turkey brine challenge for you on the site. You can try out my crazy delicious turkey brine on some chicken and see what you think. And if you love it, you can do it for Thanksgiving. Get details for that at cookthestory.com/challenge. I'm giving away 2 Amazon gift cards, so that's super fun. Extra incentive, but like something you probably want to try anyways. So easy to do. So yeah, as you're planning ahead, you can think about that, the turkey brine. You can think about if you're going to do turkey in parts, and you can start thinking about whether you want to do a scaled down Thanksgiving, which does take a little bit of planning ahead, but can make things much easier once it's coming, So yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's time to just sort of slightly start thinking about Thanksgiving plans. That would be my advice right now. So then, all of this actually ties in a little bit with my guest today, because one of the things we're talking about would be perfect for Thanksgiving. My guest is Melissa Knific from melissaknific.com. Melissa trained at the French Culinary Institute in New York, and she has an incredible career developing recipes and content for huge names like household names, Family Circle, HelloFresh, and Rachel Ray. Actually, her work as the food director at Rachel Ray in Season earned an Eddie Award, which is a huge deal in the publishing world. And she has a new cookbook coming out in February. It's available for pre-order. She's going to tell us about it, and I'm going to give you a hint. Marty, who does not like to cook, is very excited about this cookbook. If you know some things about Marty, you might have already guessed. Okay, I am super excited for you to hear this conversation. Let's listen now. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited to talk with you because I am a huge national parks buff, and my boyfriend and I, well, he's been to even more than me, but I've been to over 30 of them, and I love them.
That's
And I
amazing.
love the restaurants, the lodges, all of that. So you have this new cookbook available for pre-order coming out. Can you tell us about it, please?
Sure. So the book is National Geographic's National Parks Cookbook. I'm co-authoring it with my pal Nina Elder, and she and I go back pretty far. We both have had similar jobs in the food world, and so she was just a real joy to work with on this book. But the book focuses on, of course, the food surrounding the national parks. It's inspired by the national parks. There's 63 national parks, as I'm sure you know. Sounds like you've tackled, more than half at this point, which is really amazing. And there's 100 recipes in the book. So there's at least one recipe for every park. Some have two. And half the recipes, I would say, are contributed from lodges, chefs, people that live near the parks. And the other half of the recipes are newly developed by me and Nina. And I think people will be surprised because I imagine that a lot of people that hear about a national parks cookbook think, oh, okay, like there's going to be a lot of camping food in here. And there's certainly a few of those and some that can be adapted to that. But really, there's also some really elevated food from some of the lodges and again, some of the chefs. But there's also, dinners that are doable for a weeknight. There's some drinks in there, a bunch of desserts, appetizers. It kind of runs the whole gamut of recipe meal types. So I think I'm really excited for people to see it. The photography is stunning. Of course, National Geographic has amazing scenic photography, and there's a bunch of vintage photos in there too in the park. So it's really, really great. And yeah, I'm excited to share it with everybody.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to see it. I will put in my pre-order immediately. As soon as I heard about it, I wanted to talk with you. We go to the parks. Of course, we go to the parks and we love hiking and we do all that. But like my favorite parts are the history of the particular like lodges where they're from. Like my memories of, I think it's Shenandoah. I've written it down so I get it right. But the Big Meadow Lodge and Skylands restaurants, like
Oh,
beautiful
yeah.
views, old buildings, and then like the history of the land and the people who were there and of like when it was built with do you know what it was called? CCPP. We might pause and look it up.
Mm.
Sorry, I'll tell you and then we'll look it up and then it won't sound
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the group, like it was like during the Depression, and the government did this whole big parks project as part of like, it was
Oh,
after the
gosh.
Hoover Dam was
Yeah.
built and like all of that. I think it's called CPP. I'll look it up real quick.
There was so much research that
Yeah.
went into this, and my brain was like flooded with historical facts. And the national park history is really amazing.
Yeah, so it's the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, like just the history of all of that. And you see it in the buildings and in those restaurants that you think you're going to a nature park. And instead, this is where like wealthy families went on vacation and all of that history is there. And so I think you're really bringing people into a part of the national parks that they might not have known was there. Is that part of what inspired the book?
Yeah, so National Geographic actually came to us wanting to do this book. And so we, obviously there's so many parks, so the history is so deep, and we sort of took it in this direction, right? There's obviously amazing food, it's inspired by the flora and fauna of the parks, but yes, in the end, the history behind each of these parks is written throughout the book. So every recipe comes with a head note, that will talk about that specific park and either provide, a historical point of reference or just something that gives sort of the flavor of what this park means. and why this recipe makes sense. So yeah, it was so amazing to just take a deep dive into each of these parks and realize that there's so much about this country I didn't know. And so it was fun to come up with like some of the new recipes too. I was thinking you mentioned Shenandoah. That park has two recipes, and one of them is from the Skyland, the Mile High Blackberry Ice Cream Pie.
Famous.
You may have had it while you were
Yeah.
there.
I think we had it twice.
Yeah. So you know all about that. So that's really fun that we were able to use that recipe from them. The other one was a recipe that I actually developed, and it was a country ham with red eye gravy and grits. And that I remember when I was researching, like, what else I want to do something with country ham. And I was thinking about, I was doing all this research about ham in the area. And I didn't know this, but there's this actual part of the US, well, of the world, the strip of the world called the Ham Belt. And it's like this area that ham cures perfectly in throughout the world. So Shenandoah falls within that ham belt. So there's also parts of Spain, in that same area. So it's really amazing. It's like some of the things that I learned. So yeah, the country ham. And then have you ever had red eye gravy?
Red eye gravy, like with coffee in it.
Yeah.
Is it a
Yeah.
is it a ham? I end up in a weird conversation with people sometimes here because there are pockets of Florida where a tomato gravy is called red eye gravy, and I think that
Interesting.
something got like confused at some point in there. But it's supposed to be that your eyes get red from eating this, right? Because it has the coffee.
Yeah. Well, so there's lots of conjecture about where this and that, came from. But the red eye gravy that is common in this part of the world is made with coffee, and it's like the most basic pan gravy that you could come up with. So you like cook this ham steak in the pan, and then once you brown it a little bit and you get the pan drippings, and that's when you add your coffee into the pan. So it's not for the faint of heart. It's definitely like a pick me up breakfast, and you serve all of that over grits. So that was Shenandoah. But yeah, it was really fun to just visit, even if a lot of it was virtually. We didn't get to sadly travel to all of the parks. But yeah, the US park system is really amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really amazing. It's as a Canadian who is now an American, or originally Canadian, now American. I loved the Canadian national parks, and I actually didn't even know that the United States had so many of them, and that they were so many of them are so well like designed for tourists to visit, and the programs and the ways to see each one. Like each one has a different, like some of them are best to walk through, and some you drive through, and some you have to get on a bus and take the bus through. And like each one has one you can only really snorkel in because it's all underwater, right? Like each one is different, and it's kind of like the country, so different everywhere. So
I feel like oh, sorry.
Oh no, you go.
I was going to say another thing that I thought, because you mentioned that you're originally from Canada, that you'll I think appreciate about the book is there's a recipe from North Cascades National Park, and it's called Almost There Poutine. And this was a contributed recipe from their park. But the idea is that you're not quite to Canada, and this isn't quite poutine. So anyway, it's really cute, and it's really delicious too.
So Cascades, remind me of where that is. Is that in Washington State?
Yeah, I gotta get my little map out.
I think it's the one you can actually see Canada. Like you're up on like the side of the mountain.
It's like really right there.
Yeah.
Super, super close to the border.
To the Canadians listening, we are well aware that is nowhere near Quebec. And
correct, which is where poutine.
and there is poutine in British Columbia, but probably not very much of it. So we don't. But it's still
which also plays to the name Almost There.
Oh
Not
yeah.
quite poutine.
Not quite, not quite. We've embraced it as a national dish, but it's very much more Quebecois than anywhere. Well, Melissa, I could talk about the National Geographic's National Parks Cookbook with you all day and about national parks all day, but I also want to get in some of your specializations. You're known for really having a lot of great shortcuts and hacks for getting dinner on the table. Do you have a couple of those to share with us today?
Yeah, sure. So, my background is I'm a recipe developer and also an editor. And throughout my time in food, I've spent time at places like Family Circle magazine. I don't know if you remember that, but folded some years back. But so there's Family Circle, and then I spent some time at HelloFresh. I worked at Rachel Ray, and then now I'm freelance and I do a lot of recipe development for other brands and publications. But a lot of those recipes have been focused around family dinners, family friendly meals. And so just going along with that, that involves a lot of okay, I need to get dinner on the table quickly. People are always asking for shortcuts. And I remember thinking at the beginning of my career, this was pre-kids when I started at Family Circle, I was like, yeah, I can, navigate my way through. I learned so much about what people are actually cooking and wanting from recipes. But now that I have, two of my own and I still do this for a living, it's become even more apparent that, shortcuts are necessary. So some of the things that I like to do are I always if I know I'm short on time, I always pick up a rotisserie chicken. I work with this company called Challenge Butter, and they're a California based butter brand. And they did a survey that found out that 90% of Americans don't start a meal from scratch, which is pretty crazy to think about, right? But it makes sense. And so one of the number one shortcut in this survey was rotisserie chicken. I was like, oh, that's funny. Like that's, my shortcut too. And so I think that is, again, one of the best ways to start. You can do so many things with it. You can get multiple uses out of it. Whether it's, making an enchilada, shredding it and stuffing it or in tortillas and covering it with lots of good cheese or adding it to soup, right? Soup season. There's so many different ways to use it there. A white chicken chili or, tossing it into pasta. It's sort of endless, the things that you can do with it. But I also like to save the bones. And while it sounds maybe a little fussy, it honestly doesn't really take that much time to make as a broth, to make stock. And so, just throw that in there with some odds and ends vegetables and simmer it and turn it off. And then once the kids are in bed, I'll, clean it up with everything else. So I think that you can get a lot out of a chicken. I could talk about that for hours.
No, I'm with you. I was telling you before we started recording that I've been teaching my kids more cooking and they're taking over dinners, and literally was just showing them the other day that we could take the meat off the chicken and then put the carcass into the Instant Pot with whatever scraps we've got. And then it turns into broth soup the next day. And they're teenagers. So they're minds are blown and also they're bored. Oh, wow, that's really cool. And anyways, and they're walking away, but I love that. It's so great. No, I love a rotisserie chicken.
I also think that you can, make almost we were talking about starting from scratch, but also making a quick pan sauce. Again, it sounds, sounds so fancy when you think about it, but really it's so simple and such an easy way to make a simple, delicious meal. So, you're starting with chicken breasts, right? You're just searing them in the pan and then you drop a little, when you take the chicken out, you deglaze or, get all those brown good bits off the bottom of the pan with some chicken stock, maybe some of that stuff you made from scratch, maybe not. And when you turn off the heat, you can just stir in some butter and it makes a thickened sauce that you can just pour over your chicken with. If you have fresh herbs on hand, you can add those to the mix. I mentioned Challenge Butter and they have a new product that they're called butter cubes. And they're really great for recipes like this, shortcuts, because they come in 4 tablespoon measurements. And so, if you have a family of 4, or if not, like if you're just cooking most recipes come in, for 4 servings. So like you could use it for leftovers too. 4 tablespoons is kind of like the perfect amount.
Yeah.
And you can throw that right in the pan and not have to like cut anything. And, it's really, really simple. So I like to take those butter cubes too and I dot them over a casserole and sort of make that crunchy topping for something a little extra.
Oh, I love those ideas. You know what? I was talking about the tomato gravy that may or may not sometimes be called probably not red eye gravy in Florida. Complicated story, but it is one of my favorite things to do with a simple chicken, and it's butter or bacon. You can use bacon fat, but the butter cube works. It's the right amount. Butter, same amount of flour, 4 tablespoons, and then it's a can of diced tomatoes. And then you can just have that. You have to thin it out a little bit with water or stock, or you could do a little bit of cream, and it's like buttery. It's not like spaghetti sauce, tomato sauce, like at all. It's just this like creamy gravy. It's usually served over biscuits, like a breakfast gravy, but it's so good on chicken. Like it's just,
I want to make this now. I feel like it'd be so good over shrimp too.
Oh yeah. It's such just a twist on gravy sauce, easy. And I always have a can of diced tomatoes. So good. And then the butter makes everything better.
Butter does make everything better. I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm all on board for that with that.
So, these are great ideas. I love this. And yeah, rotisserie chicken. I grab one probably every week, maybe every second week when I'm like, I'll have on my grocery list something like, we'll just say dinner. Or lunch, which means I have not thought that far ahead, but I need one yet. And that's what I'm grabbing almost every time. Well, Melissa, I'm super curious now. You've brought a actual full recipe to tell us about. And I don't know if you went in the national parks direction or if you've gone in the kitchen hacks direction or somewhere completely else. What are you telling us about today?
So I'm going to go with a current favorite of mine. It's a recipe I developed for New York Times Cooking. And it feels like it's something that you can do year round. It's a baking recipe, but it's a blueberry corn muffin. And the best thing about this is that you can sort of customize. I know they're blueberry, but you can sort of put in whatever fruit you have on hand or leave them out if you want. But it's customizable and they freeze up really nicely. They're great breakfast. They're a great dinner alongside a big bowl of chili, and the texture in them is really nice. So do you want me to walk you through it?
Yeah. No, I'm super excited. So the texture, is it cornbread like, but with the sweetness of the blueberries sort of thing, or moisture?
Yeah, there's like a little bit of sweetness. I know that there's 2 camps when it comes to cornbread. And to me, I always had a little bit of sweetness in my cornbread. I grew up going to South Carolina every summer, and I feel like we always had like sweetened cornbread. And also I grew up in Ohio, but there was always cornbread on the side of a bowl of chili, and it was always sweetened. So I went a little sweet in there. You can pull it back if you want, but I feel like it's nice here because it balances a little tartness in the blueberries. So like if you were to use strawberries in this recipe, for example, I would probably pull back the sugar a little bit. You can just sort of adjust it to your taste. Yeah. But the cornmeal, you can use a fine grain or a medium grain. And I give the weight measurement in the recipe because it definitely varies by like depending on what brand and coarseness you get. But I like the medium grain because it gives it like every bite has a little bit of, toothiness.
Yes, I love that.
So yeah, it's a really great, and it's easy. It's, all mixed in the bowl and scooped into the muffin tins. I think that one of the things to me that makes this recipe different than other corn muffins is I have a 10-minute rest time built in after you mix together the wet and dry ingredients. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I really think people, if they can try not to skip over that part, it's good because it helps the cornmeal hydrate. Mm-hmm. And so the muffins they stay really moist.
That makes sense. Yeah. It like plumps up a little bit before it starts baking and drying out from the heat of the baking process. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So where do you start when you're making these corn muffins?
Yeah. So, obviously you're gonna, you need a standard size muffin tin for this. I mean, again, you can adjust it. If you have mini ones, you'll have to adjust the time later. But I used a standard size muffin tin. It yields 12. So you're going to, make sure that you heat the oven to 400, and then you coat your muffin tin. You'll want to do this even if it's a non-stick pan. You want to make sure that they pop out easily at the end. I recommend butter because you're using it in the recipe, but cooking spray also works here. And then, you'll in one bowl, you're going to mix your dry ingredients. So you have your cornmeal. Again, it's either fine grain or medium coarseness. There is flour also in there. It's just kind of necessary for the structure of this. And baking powder and your baking soda for your lift. And salt, of course, because I can't do a baked good without salt. And then there's an optional lemon zest. I like it with the blueberries a lot. But again, if you're switching up the fruit, you might not want it or need it. So that's in one bowl. And then in your other bowl, you have the wet ingredients. You have a stick of melted butter. And then, you have some milk and an egg and sugar. And so those are whisked. And then that's the point where you combine the two of them. And you let it hang out on the counter for 10 minutes to do the whole hydration thing like I talked about. My recommendation is don't add the fruit until after that point, because I like to you can use fresh berries, but again, another reason this recipe I think is adaptable is that you can totally use frozen berries here. And I keep them fully frozen when I mix them into the batter at this point. So, it's not that it's going to necessarily change the flavor, but the leaching from the liquid, if you add the frozen berries too early, it might make your blueberry violet colored or gray colored.
At gray, right? I do the same thing. I'm doing blueberry pancakes. If I'm using frozen blueberries, I put the batter in the skillet and then drop the frozen blueberries onto it so that they're not even risking that like spreading purple gray unpleasant color. They still taste good. They taste great. But just that color isn't always as pretty.
Yeah. So if you're doing it from frozen, it won't generally do that. And also fresh, shouldn't be an issue if you're mixing it after that rest period. At that point, when it's rested, the batter is not going to look real wet. It's going to be hydrated and it's going to it's going to be stiff. You can give it another mix. And then I use a cookie scoop to, distribute it into the tins. And at that point, you just bake it. So they're done in, 18 to 20 minutes. I cool them for a few minutes in the pan, and then I use a little offset spatula to pop them out. Usually they come out, if you've coated that, they come out, you don't need to line or anything. They usually pop out pretty easily. But give it that 5-minute cooling time to sort of, do its thing so it doesn't stick. And then that's it. I like them, you can let them cool further. I feel like muffins are one of those things you want to eat right away, but I think you need to give it like 10 minutes, at least 15 minutes, so that you can taste the flavors, it's just not too hot, but they'll still be warm, and you can spread some honey butter or, whatever you want on there, or just eat them as is. And you can keep them at room temperature in an airtight container for a few days. If it's longer than that, I would transfer them to the fridge, and they freeze really well too. So, do a double batch and freeze half.
Wonderful. I love this. And I love the idea of these with like a pot of chili, the like spicy and like a little bit of acidity. And then the cornbread, which it's like savory, but sweetness, like it just like balancing each other out so well.
Yeah. It's kind of this recipe, that pairs with it's a little sweet. It pairs really well with savory. Like I said, you can have it for breakfast with a little bit of, yogurt dolloped on it. I was visiting my parents in Ohio last week, and they my mom made a batch with raspberries instead, and it was really good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Melissa, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Can you let people know where they can find you, more of your recipes online? Where should they go?
Sure. So I have a website. It's just melissanific.com, but you can also find me on Instagram. It's at Melissa Knific. My cookbook with Nina is out February 3rd. So that is available for pre-order now. And, you can find it on barnesandnobles.com, Amazon. So yeah, a couple places there, but I'll send you the links to the recipe and the book.
Yes, wonderful. And I will put all the links in the show notes for everybody so they can click and find. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Wow, I told you that was a blueberry cornbread muffin, a National Geographic National Parks cookbook, red-eye gravy, butter cubes, and rotisserie chicken. So much great information, so much exciting stuff from Melissa. Thank you so much, Melissa. Check her out, melissanific.com. Knific is spelt Knific. And go and pre-order that cookbook. I am so psyched about it. Okay, so now what can I tell you about that's going on in my kitchen? I am working on more of those recipes for two. I have a quick fake out Thai soup recipe that I'm working on, and also something that I'm tentatively calling a Mediterranean stir fry. I know that the correct word would be saute, but I think saute is what is that? People don't really know, but everybody knows what a stir fry is. And all that the Mediterranean stir fry is it's taking the same techniques that we know from stir fry, but changing the ingredients of the sauce and the seasonings to give you just an alternative when you want that kind of quick, fresh veggie kind of meal, but you don't necessarily want the same flavors you always have. So I am working on those this week, and I've already done some testing on them. And so I think it'll be the final test and the pictures. So I'm excited about those. I can also tell you what is new on the site. There is a delicious, juicy, beefy pork and beef meatloaf recipe that is up on the Cookful. I think I already told you about the pasta fagioli soup for two. That is also up on the Cookful. We've also got some new videos up live on the website, and those will be rolling out on social media soon. But if you want to see those, the panko breaded fried chicken is up on the Cookful, and my quick pickles recipe. This is literally you can pickle cucumber slices in 30 minutes if you're just craving them or want them on a burger or something. Such a great recipe. Those have new videos up. I will link to those in the show notes for this podcast episode. Ooh, and my buttered egg noodle recipe. This is not homemade egg noodles. This is just egg noodles you buy at the grocery store. But the way that I make them, every time I make them, everybody's like, what did you do to these noodles? These noodles are so good. And so I finally was like, you know what? I need to make a video showing this, even though I'm slightly embarrassed to do so because it's really not anything that special, but I'm telling you, people love them. I love them too. I mean, I don't make them any other way, but there's nothing really, really secret or special going on. That video is live on the Cookful and will be rolling out on social media soon. If you don't follow me already, I am Cook the Story everywhere that I am, and that is Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, or at least that's where you'll find these videos. I'm also on Pinterest, but I don't post videos there. But yeah, Cook the Story anywhere. You will see these videos rolling out, or you can go to cookthestory.com and thecookful.com and find them there. Okay, I think that is everything. I know we're mid-October. I'm telling you to start thinking about Thanksgiving. I know we have Halloween coming up before that, but it is not a food holiday, so not something that I spend time worrying that much about. It is all about the food and the cooking. I'm excited. You know what? This weekend I am doing making a big batch of pierogies, teaching my kids a little bit. So yeah, there is lots going on in my kitchen for sure. I hope that you are enjoying some cooking or some eating or both wherever you are. I want to say a big thank you to Melissa Knific for being such a great guest. Go and check her out, pre-order that cookbook, and a big thank you to you for listening, and a big thank you to you for spreading the word about this podcast and leaving comments on my recipes, all of that. It is more important than ever with AI kind of taking over and people trusting it for just about everything. It is better to have real people, real community, and I appreciate you guys so much. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.